Exorcism of Ethan Lévy. In a desolate corner of Finland, nestled deep within the shadow of ancient forests and beyond the reach of most maps, there lay a forsaken place known as Kuolio. Few dared to venture there. It was a place forgotten by time, its name a whisper lost to the winds. It was here that a child was born, a boy with a crooked face that turned eyes away in subtle disquiet. Though his mother saw nothing wrong, she named him Ethan Lévy, and in the quiet of her heart, she loved him fiercely. The father, a man shackled to his own demons, drank relentlessly. The streets buzzed with the rumors, fights, broken promises, and the weight of a marriage undone by the bottle. The whispers spoke of violence and heartbreak, of a woman too proud to beg for help, too broken to change. Eventually, they separated and the father disappeared into the haze of his addiction. Ethan's mother, unwilling to stay amidst the judgment of the village, took her child and retreated further into isolation. She found a cabin by the lake, surrounded by dense forests that cut the world off as though it had never existed. It was here she hoped to raise her son in peace, far from the ghosts of the past. But at the same moment that Ethan entered the world, far across the sea, the Pope was struck by a vision, one that shattered his peace and led him to a sudden collapse. A demonic force had risen, he said, and he had seen it with his own eyes. As his heart failed, his last words were an order to his closest confidant, Father Lorenzo. The priest was to investigate this unholy vision, one that led to a remote part of the north. Time was short, the details the Pope promised would come later. Lorenzo received the summons. He packed holy water, a Bible, and other sacred items, then boarded a flight, crossing vast distances. The journey led him to the small Kuolio airport, where the chill of the land seeped into his bones. He found a taxi and asked the driver to take him to Kuolio. The driver, an unremarkable man named Edward, raised an eyebrow at the request. He explained in a thick accent that few people ever asked to be driven to such a place. In fact, no one did. He chuckled, though there was something unsettling in his eyes. Kuolio? It means necrosis in Finnish, Edward said, his voice trailing off as he gave a strange, almost nervous laugh. An uncomfortable silence fell over the car as they drove through the thickening forest, the trees closing in like dark sentinels. When the taxi finally halted, the road ahead was blocked by an old rusted sign, a weathered warning of private property. Edward glanced nervously over his shoulder, but offered no further words as he drove off, leaving Lorenzo at the edge of the forest. Lorenzo, now standing alone in the damp cold, approached the cabin. A strange feeling stirred in the pit of his stomach. It was as if the very air around him grew heavier, thicker. He could sense something dark lurking just beyond his vision, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. With steady resolve, he knocked on the door. A woman answered, her face weary but kind. Her voice was low, soft with the rhythm of the land.
"Who are you?"
she asked. Lorenzo cleared his throat, offering a polite smile despite the unease that gripped him.
"I am Father Lorenzo. I've been sent by the Vatican. May I come in?"
She hesitated for a moment but stepped aside.
"Of course, please. Come in."
The inside of the cabin was dim, the air thick with the smell of wood and something else, something stale and unwelcoming. The woman offered him a seat on a faded, worn sofa, its fabric frayed and thin with age.
"Coffee or tea?"
she asked, her voice lulling. Lorenzo politely refused, though he could not shake the feeling that something was not quite right. As they sat in the eerie silence, the woman turned to him, curiosity in her eyes.
"Why have you come here? No one ever visits us, especially not from another country."
Lorenzo's eyes flicked to the dark corners of the room as he spoke.
"I was sent by the Pope. He has seen something. A vision. He believes an evil force has risen in this part of the world, and he wishes to know if it is true."
The woman's expression never faltered. She shook her head slowly as if unsure how to respond.
I have not heard of anything evil,
she said flatly, her voice too calm for comfort.
The only evil I've known is my ex-husband. He drank and did terrible things. But he's gone now. You're not looking for him, are you?
Lorenzo stiffened, the sensation of darkness that had followed him into the cabin now pressing against him like a heavy weight. Something about her words, her detachment, struck him as wrong.
I sense something,
he said, his voice quieter now.
Is there anyone else here?
No,
she replied, the words slipping from her lips as if she hadn't really considered them.
Just my child.
A chill ran down his spine.
May I see the child?
Without hesitation, she led him through a narrow corridor, her footsteps soft and deliberate. They stopped before a door, its surface old and battered. The woman casually unlocked it, one lock, then another, then a third, her hands moving with a practiced ease. She hummed a lullaby as she opened the door, revealing a room dimly lit and empty save for a baby's crib at the center. Lorenzo's breath caught in his throat. The crib was moving, slowly, almost imperceptibly, as if an unseen hand was rocking it. A dark presence pressed in around him, as if the very room exhaled something vile. His hand instinctively gripped the crucifix around his neck, the cold metal reassuring, though his heart raced with dread. He whispered the words he had been taught to recite in such moments, his voice trembling but steady.
Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
As he stepped closer to the crib, the room grew colder, the shadows deepening. The baby's face, pale and lifeless, stared up at him from the crib, but the crib was empty. Lorenzo's breath hitched as a cold, oppressive gust of air swept through the room, the kind of cold that felt like a breath from the very mouth of hell. He looked up, and what he saw made his blood run cold. From the ceiling, a figure twisted and writhed, its legs crooked, contorted in unnatural angles. The creature was a grotesque shadow, its form vaguely humanoid, but with an unmistakable hunger in its eyes. It stared at him, unmoving, its body pulsing with an eerie malevolence. Lorenzo's heart pounded in his chest as he stepped back, his mind screaming for clarity, for a sign, but it was too late. The demon, Leviathan, had found him. And now it was ready. As the cold breath fills the room, the shadow above Lorenzo contorts into a grotesque figure, its elongated legs twisted at impossible angles, the grotesque shape of Leviathan. The air grows heavy, the oppressive weight of the demon's presence suffocating. Lorenzo's heart races, and his grip tightens on the crucifix around his neck, a bead of sweat rolling down his brow. The baby's crib, now eerily still, casts a long shadow over the room. The mother's face, once kind and welcoming, contorts into something unrecognizable. Her eyes blacken, the skin on her face stretching, her mouth twisting into a sinister grin as the voice of the demon emerges from her throat, deep and guttural.
You should have never come here, priest. The boy is mine, as was his father. All of you are mine. It was I who brought his father to ruin, to his death. It was I who planted the seed of envy in her heart.
Lorenzo steps back, fear creeping into his spine as the words of the demon pierce his soul. He lowers his head in prayer, but his voice falters for a moment before he finds the strength to continue.
Tetina mele pas nose quias in caelis, sanctificetur nomen tuum.
The demon's laughter echoes through the room, thick with malevolent energy. The woman, now fully possessed, speaks again, her voice a distorted blend of her own and the demon's.
She killed him, priest. She killed the man she once loved. The envy I stirred in her, it was too great to resist. Her hatred of him, of his weakness, drove her to murder. She buried him beneath the cabin. Do you think I did not know how to manipulate her? She felt him slipping away, and I made her want to keep him in death as she could not in life.
Lorenzo stands frozen, but the words drive him further into the depths of despair. He looks towards the woman, her body trembling, yet something darker swirls in her eyes.
She cannot save herself now. The sin she bears will consume her.
The demon croons.
But she can still save him, the child, if only she gives herself to me.
The priest breathes deeply, gathering every ounce of courage he has. He raises his hands, gripping the cross tightly. His voice grows louder, stronger with each prayer he utters.
Exorcismus te omne homus immundus spiritus, omne satanica potestas, omnes incursio infernales adversari.
The demon hisses and the mother rides on the floor, her form distorting as the evil force fights against the holy incantations. The air grows colder, and suddenly the woman's voice cracks with clarity. The true voice of her grief breaking through.
Yep. I killed him. I killed my husband. I didn't want to, but the envy, it was so strong, it made me do it. I hated him for what he became, for what he did to us, and I buried him behind the cabin. I was weak. I didn't know it was you, Leviathan. I didn't know.
Her confession is the moment of truth. The demonic force flickers, its hold on the woman wavering as the truth begins to penetrate the depths of her soul. She looks to the priest, her eyes filled with remorse, tears streaming down her face.
Please, save my son. I am beyond redemption. But him? Please, save him.
Lorenzo's heart aches with pity. He looks at the woman, then to the crib where the child's innocent presence still lingers despite the darkness. The demon shrieks, the air crackling with malevolent energy. But the priest's resolve hardens.
Parebaptise Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
The demon writhes, its body pulsing with a horrific, inhuman energy. But Lorenzo continues, the power of the holy prayers building around him like a divine shield. The mother, in a final act of sacrifice, throws herself in front of the priest, her body becoming a vessel for the demon's fury. With a final, agonizing scream, she is consumed. The dark energy rips through her body, and as it fades, a deep, hollow silence fills the room. The twisted form of Leviathan fades into the ether, defeated at last, leaving only the remnants of the woman's broken body. Lorenzo stumbles, his knees weak as he rushes to the child. The baby, unharmed but crying, reaches for him, as if sensing the safety the priest brings. Lorenzo takes the boy into his arms, his heart heavy with the sorrow of what has transpired. The priest stays with the child for a few more days, ensuring the evil has truly departed. Afterward, with great solemnity, he makes the decision to take the child to the Vatican. The child, Ethan Lévy, would now grow up in the care of the church, far from the haunting past of Kuolio. Before he leaves, Lorenzo looks back one last time at the cabin. The horrors that had transpired there would never leave him, but he knew that, through the child, hope could be restored. He had come seeking to destroy a demon, but in the end, he had saved a child, one that would live to carry on the legacy of a new life, free from the darkness that had nearly consumed him. And as he looked at the boy, he whispered a vow to protect him, to guide him. Ethan Lévy was no longer a child of evil. He was a child of hope. And as they left the remote cabin behind, Lorenzo knew that he had fulfilled his mission. But the memory of Leviathan would always be with him, lingering like the whisper of envy that could never truly be erased.